My name is Marty Wender, and I was born in Fort Worth. My father was born in Vienna, Austria, and he had to escape Austria when Hitler came in. So he escaped to the United States. Everybody on his side of the family were killed in the Holocaust. Joined the Army and was stationed here at Fort Sam Houston, San Antonio, and that's where he met my mother. My mother's family were in the dry good business in Alvarado, Texas, which is about 30 miles south of Fort Worth. Well, when I was starting the first grade, I was the worst reader in our group. And I really kind of got down on myself thinking I was dumb. They thought I had an eye-muscle coordination problem. I didn't find out till I was out of college that I was dyslexic. I really believe to this day that I'm stronger because I was dyslexic. Real estate had always fascinated me, so I decided to go to work for my father-in-law. It was a good business. I wanted to do things my way. In 1981, when I went out on my own, Henry Cisneros was the mayor of San Antonio. I knew him when I was in the family business because he was a city councilman from the district our family business was in. And I really felt like San Antonio was going to take off. I really felt like that it was in a great position to move forward, and I really believed in Henry Cisneros. He and I were close friends, so I decided I want to get out of a safe environment and jump into the fire, and that's what I did. When I moved to San Antonio in 1969, everybody believed that growth was going to go due north, that the most valuable property in San Antonio in '69 and the '70s was San Pedro inside Loop 410. Everybody believed that 281 was going to be the golden corridor of San Antonio, and the most promising future piece of property was a corner of 281 and 1604. When I went out on my own, I found a tract of land on I-10 beyond 1604. And I kind of sat back and said, okay, what has changed? And why isn't 281 the golden corridor? Why is I-10? Well, some people said that 281 doesn't go anywhere. 281 goes to Johnson City, where I-10 starts off in Jacksonville, Florida, New Orleans, Houston, San Antonio, El Paso, Tucson, Phoenix, and in Los Angeles, I-10 west of the Santa Monica Freeway. That wasn't the reason. Other people said that I-10 was a controlled access freeway, a freeway with access roads the whole way. It was, 281 didn't become that until more recently, and beyond 1604 today, it's not a controlled access freeway. That's not the reason. What I realized was that major economic generators either located or relocated west of I-10. And I believe that the economic generators affect growth like a drop in a barrel of water. It just kind of radiates out. And people realize the growth between 10 and 281, but they didn't realize the growth west of I-10. And it was growing, but that was an area that most people in San Antonio didn't go to. But once you go to the west, you get off of the severe topography, you get off the rock, you get off the recharge zone, and you get away from the bugs and the birds. And that's why I went west. I went out and found 5 ranches, 3,500 acres that 2 people lived on, and decided that that would be the right place to develop. The property had 2 problems. Problem number 1, it was west, and nobody would go west. Everybody thought that west was the wrong direction. They thought of the near west side and didn't realize what was going on beyond 410 on the west side. And number 2, we had an access problem. We have a great system of freeways, but the biggest gap in the freeway system in San Antonio, you have 10, 281, 35, 10 going to Houston, 10 east going to Houston, you have 37, you have 35 going south, you have Highway 90 going west. But the biggest gap in the freeway system was between Highway 90 and I-10, and that was the fastest growing area of town. So we knew we needed an access. I had no frontage on 410, and we came up with an idea of putting a freeway that would service the fastest growing area of San Antonio before we got there, and take it all the way to Highway 90 instead of putting it into I-10, and developed a new corridor of San Antonio growth.
I see a major lake out here with specialty retail around it, specialty malls, hotels, a major destination resort hotel, 36-hole championship, golf course, tennis facilities, ice skating facilities, and on and on and on.
When I first bought the property, I believed that 90% of it was going to be residential. When we came up with the freeway, all of a sudden it changed. That changed everything. We had the residential support. It now became a commercial corridor, and it became a magnet for new corporations. The first corporation I lured to Westover Hills was a company called WOAI Technology, which was a computer chip manufacturer. Then SeaWorld chooses San Antonio. Now, when they chose San Antonio, they decided to go on the east side, going toward Houston. And that made a lot of sense to me. People could drive in from Houston and go home in one day. They could drive in from Austin, go home in one day. And I thought that made a lot of sense. What I found out later was they could not build those huge tanks for the mammals, the whales, and the dolphins and everything over expansive clay soil. And it just would rip them up. So then they moved to a site out Highway 90 on the west side, and it had the same problems with the soil. And Mayor Henry Cisneros asked me to get involved because we were scared we were going to lose it for San Antonio. And I found them a spot on rock. It was not the hard rock like north of 1604 on the north side, but it was called rippable rock, and that's where. So I sold the land to SeaWorld, and between the freeway and SeaWorld, that changed the direction of growth, not only for Westover Hills, but for the entire west side.
SeaWorld Grand Opening TV Special on KSAT 12.
Come enjoy it for the first time, before a new time come again.
SeaWorld has now been open 30 years in San Antonio and Westover Hills, and SeaWorld really changed the dynamics of this area. That when I bought the land in 1983, it was going to be 90% residential. Between the freeway and SeaWorld, it's changed into a major corridor, entertainment, the Hyatt Resort Hotel, many other hotels. This was the first theme park in San Antonio. If it had not been for that, we wouldn't have Six Flags, and it really helped change the tourism industry to be the #4 industry in San Antonio. Then the man that came to build SeaWorld, his name was George Becker, and he had been involved in the SeaWorld in Orlando, the SeaWorld in San Diego, and when he moved here to build the SeaWorld in San Antonio, he said, "Gosh, this is fantastic. You can play golf here all year long." He said, "Why don't you build a destination resort hotel?" And I said, "George, what is one? I don't play golf, I don't play tennis, I don't go on vacations to relax." So I studied it, and I went to Orlando, and I went to Arizona, and I went to California, and I saw what a resort hotel was. Even though a resort hotel wasn't something that was appealing to me personally, I realized that was a whole industry. Through a lot of work, I lured a Hyatt Corporation to build the Hyatt Hill Country Resort. People said, one, I'd never get it built. Number two, if it got built, it would never be successful. And the day it opened, it was the most successful destination resort hotel Hyatt had ever built. And so now I had all this land that I could master plan, and the key to it is master planning it. In other words, you put things where they need to go, not just selling off pieces. You plan where things go. And so I put SeaWorld where I thought it should go, I put the Hyatt Resort where I thought it should go, and then I started attracting a lot of companies. And what I realized was that, and again, I'd rather be lucky than smart, but what I realized after these companies were looking in San Antonio, that the two major power transmission lines are on both sides of my property that circle the city. So I could feed these companies, these high-tech companies, like computer manufacturers, and data centers, and call centers, with power from two different sources. And that's very important to these companies because they cannot have any outages of electricity. And then I get a phone call from Southwestern Bell, which is now AT&T, and said, Marty, I want to meet with you, and make a long story short, they provided fiber optics for Westover Hills. And I didn't, when they first talked to me, I didn't know what fiber optics was. And I didn't realize for 10 years what that decision was for me to help them put in fiber optics in Westover Hills. This is the newest financial service center in Westover Hills. We've attracted a lot of them. They service the whole United States, from the East Coast to the West Coast. This is Frost Bank. They do all the back office work, all their computer work, also Chase credit card centers in Westover Hills, Hartford Insurance, Nationwide Insurance, Wells Fargo. There are a lot of other financial service centers that have been attracted to San Antonio and Westover Hills because of all of the infrastructure we have and all the employees who live out here. Well, now all of a sudden I'm creating my own economic generator. So now they predict that for the next 10 years, 40 to 45% of the housing starts in San Antonio are going to be between Bandera Road and Highway 90 outside 1604. So what we've done is now we're encircling Westover Hills. So now, instead of being on the outskirts, now it's now the center. And now we are reaping the benefits of the commercial, the frontage, which the financial service centers, the data centers didn't want, but is perfect for commercial. And then supporting of SeaWorld, supporting of all the jobs out there, that's all continuing to build. We came up with the idea of a freeway. Normally freeways, the state decides they need a freeway there, then they have to get funding for the freeway, then they have to go buy right of way, and there were a list of 100 freeways ahead of us. So I met with the highway department and I says, you know, what do you think about this freeway? They said, well, it's great. I said, well, how long will it take? I said, we have no idea. There are 100 freeways in front of you. And you know, the idea of having to buy right of way, all stuff, and I said, you know, in Westover Hills, like I did in Crown Ridge and like in other developments, they build a big boulevard through there. And they have 2 or 3 lanes each direction and a center median. And I said, well, I have a budget for that. So what if I get, since we own 40% of the freeway, land fronting on the freeway, what if we gave you, instead of 110 feet or 86 feet, what if we gave you 400 feet? And we build 2 lanes each direction and the center median is 400 feet, that one day you'll lay in the freeway. And then I had a budget for my main boulevard through Westover Hills, and said, what if I give you that money? No one ever given the state money for a road. What if I give you that money and help raise the money of the other landowners? And so you can get it virtually for nothing. And the head of the highway department, his name was Raymond Stotcher. It's called the Raymond Stotcher Freeway. When he told me that, when I told him that, he said, well, that'll move you from number 100 on the list to number 1. And so from the day that we came up with the idea for the freeway to the day we went to the state in Austin to present our plan was 90 days. And what they did was they built all the access roads first, and then when the traffic came, they were going to put in. And then some people asked me, well, why did you do SeaWorld? Well, I had even though the freeway hadn't been started, it had been approved. And they told me when I got to a certain traffic count, they start putting in the main lanes. Well, that would be a normal gliding path to increase the traffic until SeaWorld. Then all of a sudden you had a big jump in traffic, and that expedited the building of the main lanes.
And new at noon, TxDOT breaks ground on a major transportation improvement project, the Highway 151 and Loop 410 intersection.
And just to get an idea of how big this project really is, nearly $82 million going toward the project. Crews will construct 2 direct connectors from traffic from eastbound Highway 151 headed for northbound 410, and for southbound 410 traffic headed for westbound Highway 151. The area has been rapidly growing, and there's more growth coming.
Behind me is the newly completed flyovers from Loop 410 to 151 for people who want to go from north central San Antonio, the airport, North Star Mall out to SeaWorld. They fly over and can come back here. 151 changed the whole use of Westover Hills because it connects Loop 1604, 410 behind us, all the way to Highway 90 and all the way to town. So you can go from SeaWorld to downtown in 12 minutes. And this is really what changed the whole development, was the process of getting 151, donating the land and paying for half the cost of the access road. Because we built so many economic generators, the use of this freeway has increased far more than we ever expected, more than the highway department. There's more money being spent in the Westover Hills area expanding freeways, Loop 1604, Highway 90, 410, and this interchange behind us than any other place in San Antonio. And another thing too is when the state was trying to help me lure SeaWorld to my tract of land, they had committed $10 million for road work to lead to SeaWorld. And when I called the governor, Mark White, and I said, look, that $10 million goes with SeaWorld, doesn't it? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, well, can I use the $10 million to build the 3 bridges on the freeway that's coming? So that way when they're building the main lanes, it wouldn't disturb the traffic to SeaWorld. He said, well, they can use it for anything they want to. So not only get my freeway, but I also got those 3 bridges, which helped with the cost and got my main lanes faster.
Well, Shamu, the killer whale, might have a new neighbor who is also a famous animal. A San Antonio developer is pulling out all the stops to get Mickey Mouse and his friends to move here.
I met a man, now he's a friend, but I met a man for the first time who was from California. And a friend of mine introduced me to him, and he comes to me and he said, yes. He said, I got an idea for you. I said, what? He said, you did the SeaWorld deal, didn't you? And I said, well, yeah. He said, how about Disney? And I said, well, obviously you're not the first person to thought of that. Do you have an idea how to get Disney? He said, well, I don't, but I know someone, I can connect you. I said, stop. If we're gonna get started with Disney, we need to start somewhere towards the top of Disney. I don't want to meet somebody down the road, down the ranks of Disney. And he said, well, if I can get you in touch with Michael Eisner. I said, he's the chairman of the board, was at the time the chairman of the board of Disney. I said, now you got my attention. And they liked the idea. Mayor Henry Cisneros and I worked on it. If it had not been for the troubles they ran into Euro Disney, we would have had Disney. We had the land plan, Henry Cisneros and I had a plan, but the timing wasn't right. When I developed Crown Ridge out I-10, I hired an ad agency. We came up with all these names because they're ridges and because there were hills, and we called it Crown Ridge. Because nobody used the name West in San Antonio, because West was not the go-to word, not the go-to direction for development. I could pick any name I wanted to. And I'm from Fort Worth, and the Alamo Heights Terrell Hills of Fort Worth is Westover Hills. So it took me about 2 seconds to come up with that name. No one ever challenged it because no one else would use West. They announced in 1987, they announced the Pope was coming to the United States, 10 days, 1 Sunday, 1 outdoor Sunday Mass, and San Antonio was chosen for Texas. It was the Texas Mass, but San Antonio was picked. And the Archdiocese came out and said, anybody that would like to donate 40 acres of land for the Papal Mass, please contact the Archdiocese. And I'm not Catholic, and I knew that it would mean so much to somebody else. I decided not to get involved. I'm not a good loser, so I decided not to submit a site. Time goes by and time goes by. A lot of rumors, no announcement, but it wasn't my deal.
Pope John Paul will begin his visit to the United States. The Pope will travel to 9 cities, beginning with Miami and ending in Detroit. The 4th city on the tour will be San Antonio.
One day I walk into my office and my secretary says to me, Marty, there are 2 priests and a nun who want to talk to you. They don't have an appointment. I said, well, put them in the conference room, let me talk to them. And they said, Marty, we're in trouble. We've spent months trying to find a place for the papal mass, and we've run into every trouble in the world. Archbishop just called us in and said, if you don't find a place for the papal mass in 1 week, we're going to move it to Houston. And I said, you can't do that. You can't move it to Houston. These people in San Antonio, you know, it's theirs. You can't do it. And the Archbishop said, whatever you do, stop dealing with those developers. Find me a site in 1 week. And they said they walked out of the room and looked at each other and said, we got to go see Marty. And so he said, here we are. So I said, I think let's get in my Jeep. I had a Jeep Wagoneer. And I said, let me drive you around. So I showed them 5 spots in Westover Hills. SeaWorld was under construction. The freeway was going to start construction. So I showed them 5 spots. And they said, well, the Pope is the head of state, so he has to be protected by the Secret Service, so they have to sign off on any site. So I said, well, show them the 5 sites. So the next day they came back and said, well, we want this one.
I'm able to tell you that we have a site. In fact, I want to repeat this. We have a site for the Holy Father's Mass.
One of the TV stations called me and says, Mr. Wender, can you come out? We do a live eye with you on the spot. And I said, sure. So here is 6 o'clock news. I'm standing out there in this field. The camera's on me, and we're watching it, the news on a little monitor.
This is the motorcade as it makes its way, by the way, to Westover Hills.
It's kind of difficult to tell from that. It looks like it might be Highway 151.
And so then all of a sudden they point to the lady says, Mr. Wender, why did you donate the land for the papal mass? I said, well, the Pope's come to the United States for 10 days, 1 Sunday, 1 outdoor Sunday mass, and San Antonio was selected. I said, the small part that I'm playing is just donating the land. It's really to the people of San Antonio and the people of Texas. This is their mass, and I'm just glad that I had a piece of land that they wanted to be on, so really it's just a minor part that I'm playing. He said, well, thank you very much, Mr. Wender. They cut away for an advertisement. After the advertisement, she said, I'm gonna make one last statement before we leave. I said, okay, so she got me out of the way, and the camera came back on her, and she says, and developer Charles Martin Wender expects no papal favors for his land donation because he's Jewish. And that really kind of got to be the theme of the whole visit. It was ecumenical. You had the Protestant preachers out there, obviously you had the Catholic, you had the Jewish. It was really, and that's one of the things I like about San Antonio. It's very ecumenical. Everybody, you know, respects each other. There's no, you know, everybody in San Antonio, it takes me back to the Hispanic culture, the mi casa es su casa. You know, everybody it's a family, and it was one of the greatest events that happened in my life, was to be able to participate in that. The Northside Independent School District bought the tract of land that the papal mass was on, and Northside Independent School District names their schools after chief justices of the Supreme Court. Well, the Pope was John Paul II, and they named the school John Paul Stevens High School after the Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens. And there's a monument on the tract of land to commemorate the papal mass. I'm a firm believer that since I've been very fortunate to live in San Antonio, you've got to give back. And I've been involved in KLRN, the public TV broadcasting company.
Hi, I'm Marty Wender.
And I'm Renee Wender. We're so excited to be chairing the 2018 Blazing Gavels auction.
Been involved in the Health Science Center, UTSA, a lot of different charities, because it's the people. And what I like about San Antonio, it's a very giving city. I had, what I do is I have partners, and on Westover Hills I had a partner with Bear Savings, and Bear Savings was the 3rd largest savings loan in San Antonio, owned by a billionaire. And our deal was that they supplied the money and I did the work. Well, they went broke. and I lost everything. But the way I handled it was, and where San Antonio is so good, is if you just admit, you know, things didn't work out, and just ask people just to give you time to get back on your feet, and they did. Well, at that time, the people who were investing were in Japan. So I went to Japan and worked with the long-term credit bank of Japan, and they believed in San Antonio, even though times were tough. The Japanese are more long-term players. They're not quarter-by-quarter players, and they believed that we had a good idea, which obviously it was, and they believed San Antonio was at the right place at the right time. So I went to Japan to get the money for the Hyatt Hill Country Resort. So then when Toyota chose San Antonio, and the real person behind that again was Henry Cisneros. With the Japanese are long-term players. They believe in the long term, not just the short term. And Henry had started a relationship with the Japanese 20 years before. So when they went after Toyota, they called me in to be part of the sales team. As I tell people, I'm in sales, not management. But number two is I understood how the Japanese worked. And I have a book called Japanese Business Etiquette. You understand how they do things. I went by the book, and the book says that all decisions are made in Japan. So, you know, they come over here and look at your project. Sometime you got to go to Japan, and I've been to Japan twice on business. Once with the Hyatt Hill Country, and then once with Toyota. About 2.5 years ago, I have a steam bath in my shower, and I took a steam bath every night. I just enjoyed it, relaxed me. And one night I went in to take a steam bath and I didn't come out. My wife comes in and finds me on the floor, and either I hit my head or passed out or something. And I was at the bottom of the shower and burned, because steam is like a fire. It burns you. And I got burned 25 to 30% of my body. And when the EMS showed up, they thought I was dead. My wife kept screaming, get into the hospital. So they took me to University Hospital, which is the closest level 1 trauma center to my house. And when they realized what the burn was, they airlifted me to Brooke Army Medical Center, which is the world's best burn center. And for 90 days, I was in a coma. They didn't know if I was gonna live or die. And then I had to go through rehab for a year afterwards. And if I had lived in San Antonio, if I hadn't been at Brooke Army Medical, my wife hadn't found me when she did, I would not be here doing this interview. But it made me realize that people joke and say, you know, Marty, you've always talked about how great the biomedical industry is in San Antonio. We didn't mean for you to go test it. But we're very fortunate. Not only do we produce a lot of people, there's a lot of good jobs in biomedical, I mean, a lot of jobs. 1 out of every 5 jobs in San Antonio are medical biomedical. And, you know, not only is it good for everybody because of all these different devices that we come out with that save people's lives, it's also good to live in a city that has this much training. And a lot of it has to do with the military, a lot of it has to do with the medical school, a lot of it has to do with Southwest Foundation for Biomedical Research, the VA hospital. We have a lot of major components here in San Antonio. I'm 72, I'll be 72 years old, and I love what I do. I love the people of San Antonio, and thank you for letting me play whatever little part I did, because I'm sure glad to be a Texan, and I'm glad to be from San Antonio. When they put me in the box and lower me down, you can't take it with you, but you only could leave the legacy that you leave to a community. And the most important thing is I want to be remembered for changing the direction of San Antonio to the west, because that was the right thing to do for a lot of different reasons. Building the infrastructure that I did, I'm very proud of. I built all freeways, I put in the proper roads, and brought companies, I brought jobs. And my wife and I, we did it yesterday, but every Sunday we drive around San Antonio and just to look and see, you know, I see people going to work, and I see people going to SeaWorld to play, and I go see people at the Hyatt Resort having a good time. Makes you feel good.